Hey, what's up, everyone? Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom talking about the head coaching carousel, which continues to spin round and round in the NFL. But here after the Super Bowl, as you can tell, I'm at home now. It is good to be home after being gone basically the entire month of January. But it's good to be home after the Super Bowl. And because it's after the Super Bowl, Bloom, we finally get to see these teams put the dot on the I that we already knew was going to happen with Zach Taylor and Brian Flores. But it's good also, Bloom, for the NFL world to kind of exhale a little bit here as well.
Yeah, until we pinch our nose and go back underwater for the combine and the draft and franchise tags, free agency, all coming up. And we learned last year, Cease, that sometimes they don't dot the I. There's no dot on the I in McDaniels because so even these formalities aren't always formalities. But yeah, Flores and Zach Taylor. In one, I think we have an organization, the Bengals, just continuing on the path that they've always been on. Years and years of asking, Marvin Lewis, why isn't he being fired? There's a financial element or just a way a business culture is run there. And they got the off-brand Sean McVay, so they're listening kind of. But Zach Taylor, probably, as the joke was made, I think I already brought this up, the idea that he was just the cheapest, or he was the one who has the connection to use the Cincinnati practice bubble to save them some money. Where Miami, maybe a little more exciting, optimistic, maybe a Belichick disciple that really works.
Well, a Belichick disciple that works, but you're going to have to wait. So we're going to get to Flores in a little bit because of the tanking that might go on in Miami in 2019. But the Bengals aren't, you may think they've been tanky, but they're not. Now with Zach Taylor taking over, before we jump into kind of the ins and outs of who he is, Bloom, is any of the shine off of him because of the way things went for the Rams in the Super Bowl? And which, by the way, expect everyone else to start doing that too. Sean McVay and company, but that was the kind of the joke is like, if you had Sean McVay's phone number, or if you like hugged the man or bro hugged him or whatever, if you knew Sean McVay, you were up for a head coaching gig. That was kind of the joke when we did this last show, part one. Now here in part two, are Bengals fans or NFL fans looking at it differently because of what happened to Sean McVay's Rams as they were dismantled in the Super Bowl?
Well, first I would say you shouldn't see Sean McVay that differently after this game. The clip of him talking to Belichick before the game, so much respect, maybe a little too much respect. And not that Belichick doesn't deserve all the respect in the world, but you can't go in defeated. You can't go in being so in awe of your opponent that you're not seeing them as a counterpart. And I think that he just didn't try to imagine, I'm Belichick, what am I going to do to me? And counter that, what Belichick would do, think the chess game a few steps ahead. He wasn't able to do that. So you shouldn't change your view of McVay based on the Super Bowl. And I think that he has the kind of personality that he will absorb this and he will learn. But as far as how it reflects on Zach Taylor, I mean, he wasn't even the passing game coordinator for that game. What could Zach Taylor do if he noticed something? Guys, hey, imagine him behind the, I figured something out. They're busy. Shh, we're, I mean, he wasn't high up in the food chain of responsibility for what happened, to be honest. I mean, you can talk about how he coached Jared Goff, and Goff looked flummoxed, but really it was the Patriots cutting off with the two formations, changing it after 15 seconds. So Goff couldn't be an extension of McVay. I don't know if Zach Taylor really enters in that equation either, as much as the Patriots understanding that cutting off that lifeline left Goff floating, and Goff just hanging out on his own is not going to be able to do much. I don't know if that's Zach Taylor's fault. That's just Jared Goff. So this is a big unknown. I mean, what the real question, Cecil, is what has Zach Taylor done to ever deserve a head coaching nod right now?
Yeah, that's the large question. And the other question that I'm thinking of is Andy Dalton going to fit in this system? Because the dirty little secret in the NFL, as everyone tries to find the right combination, is its fit.
Yeah.
Jared Goff looked like a bust with Jeff Fisher. Jared Goff looks like a pretty good young quarterback with Sean McVay, Super Bowl notwithstanding. So it's about fit in the NFL. So for me with Taylor, it's what did he do to get here? I guess that's all you got to do now. If you're a quarterback coach or on the play calling path, you're on the head coaching path in today's NFL as everyone's looking for offense. And we could talk about the assets therein. AJ Green's just out of the walking boot, Joe Mixon running the rock, all that kind of stuff. But for me, most importantly, especially because I didn't think Cincinnati was going to do anything, Bloom, but look at Andy Dalton's contract. Look at the fact that he's got no dead money left. That's not security in the NFL at all whatsoever. Now, it's quarterback desperate league. They'll probably just hang on to him through the rest of his deal. But is Dalton the right fit for what Zach Taylor could want to do with this Bengals offense?
Well, he has shown himself to be capable of being an extension of the coach quarterback. He's had some really good years with Jay Gruden. He had good years when he had Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu. So the next layer down is, and this is kind of exciting, casting John Ross as Brandon Cooks and Tyler Boyd as Cooper Kupp and AJ Green. Well, not just as Robert Woods. Really, you can put AJ Green anywhere in any role. Not on a jet sweep, I guess. But the point is, that sounds exciting, right? I mean, Joe Mixon playing the part of Todd Gurley. That sounds exciting. But you don't have the Rams offensive line, partially because the Rams have Andrew Whitworth, who may or may not play next year, instead of the Bengals. And, we'll see about the Bengals offensive line getting better. But they lost Frank Pollock, who was a good offensive line coach. And that's another question, Cease, is, well, who is Zach Taylor bringing in? Well, Brian Callahan, the younger Callahan, he's not going to get Dad, who's still under contract with Washington. Thor's back. James Casey's getting a promotion to tight end coach. That's pretty cool. Get to mention him again. And Jim Turner, who, like last time we talked about him, it was for his PowerPoint slides and the horrible things that happened in Miami's offensive line. And then who's the Wade Phillips? Dom Capers. Dom Capers is Wade Phillips. I'm not watching that movie.
Yeah, I'm not watching that movie. Watching Joe Mixon, though, and you wrote about it on our newswire at footballguys.com, Bloom, as we, the offseason doesn't stop for Football Guys. So make sure to check out our offseason content, including our newswire, which Bloom and I write the news, and talked about Mixon's consistency. When I think of Zach Taylor and I think of Sean McVay and I think of the Super Bowl, why the hell couldn't they get things going? Because you take the run away. They need play action passing. You need the influence on those linebackers and even at the safety level. And if you're not running the ball at all or ignoring the run or not running effectively or whatever you want to say, you're not going to be able to play action effectively. You just don't get that movement forward for the defense to create those throwing windows for Andy Dalton. So with Mixon, do you feel a little bit better? Because that's a key cog of what what Zach Taylor's probably going to try to do with this team and set up that play action passing. Well, that starts with Joe Mixon.
I don't think that Bill Lazor was doing a poor job. So I think there's potentially room for optimism for this offense to improve, but I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't automatically price it into my Bengals for 2019. As I said, I'm still concerned about the offensive line. It wasn't great at times. It could be invigorated. I think to go back to an earlier point you made that deserves some more attention too is the idea that if Nick Foles hits free agency and the Eagles are playing a dangerous game if they tag him, because you might not. I mean, it worked for Miami last year. They got someone to trade for Jarvis Landry and pay him. But maybe Cincinnati's one of those teams looking at someone like Nick Foles or other teams that aren't quite satisfied with their starter, but aren't like where Miami is with Ryan Tannehill. More on that later. So there's a lot of questions here. But for the Bengals' fate, the question of who that defensive coordinator is, because Jack Del Rio said no, Cease. They said, we're not feeling each other or whatever. You could probably speak to what that translates to in real world terms.
That means he can't take over as head coach.
Yeah.
Hey, you wanted the truth. We're there to tell you the truth. Like Jack Del Rio wants to be a head coach again and had really thought he would get that opportunity, and just that hasn't resurfaced at this point. So interesting to note. Do you feel good about this Taylor hire? Because, we got a soft spot for Browns fans, Bloom, as Steelers fans who now are in a world of shut your mouth.
Yeah.
But a little soft spot for the Bengals too. Do you feel good about this hire?
No, I no. There's a chance Zach Taylor could have the ability to pull the sword from the stone and be a leader of men and have this in him that he really pulls this in line, but I think he's probably going to prove to be in and over his head. And a few years, we'll be talking about the Bengals on the coaching carousel again.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Miami. And Brian Flores is there. You sound much more optimistic about the Flores hire, Bloom. Is it require patience if you're a Dolphins fan? And we know several of our friends in the media are big Dolphins fans, that grew up that loving that team, all that kind of stuff. But it sounds like they're going to tank. It sounds like they're tanking for Tua or getting clever for Trevor in 2021 or whatever you want to say, whatever clever rhyme you want to come up with. So Flores seems like not going to get the Steve Wilkes treatment. He will get some time. Is that what you're forecasting? And why do you feel so optimistic about Flores when we've seen other Patriots assistants, offensive and defensive, fail as head coaches?
Well, pulling all these layers apart first, and there was that expose on the Browns, Cecil, where they have revealed that basically the Browns were tanking then. But this is the first time I can recall where multiple beat writers for a team are just coming out and saying this team is going to tank. Like just
beforehand.
By the way, this team is going to tank. And the thing is, and this goes to like fantasy rules, our discussion of your fantasy dynasty league rules, where whether you specifically prohibit tanking, then it's not a good strategy because you're breaking the rules. But if you don't, I mean, there is something to be said for like right up to the edge of the rules, putting yourself in a position to lose to improve your draft picks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So here we are. And the thing is, the players don't get this memo. I mean, the players are still playing for themselves, and sometimes something strange can happen where maybe even like relieves some pressure. But Chris Kaufman, who does great work, CK Parrott, talking about Jake Ruddock maybe being their quarterback. I mean, Tannehill's gone. Tannehill could end up competing with Dalton in Cincinnati or Washington, or who knows. They're in a world of hurt. And that's why you're tanking, or that's why you lower expectations for this team. But we know they can, in any one game scenario, compete. They've got some players. Brian Flores, by all accounts, is a true Belichick disciple. He's the scouting side, really that 30,000-foot view of how all the pieces in the organization fit together, the organizational clarity, maybe some of the meta lessons of the Belichick way, the flexibility. And if you're going to talk about the Super Bowl, I'm not going to necessarily take a lot away from McVay or the Rams, but I will give a lot. I'll give a lot to Wade Phillips too, by the way. I mentioned him one more time. And you got to give a lot to Flores. And you see who's being brought in, and Jim Caldwell, I don't know, Chad O'Shea though. And you're seeing, and Skolpinski, I might not be saying that right, two of the offensive assistants from New England going to Miami, which isn't customarily what happens. So that could be good. But as you said, a year or two down the line. But what you like the most, Cease, here is this idea, if you're tanking, you're giving the coach 3-4 years to institute his program. And we have that Belichick level program. You need that. So it implies some patience. You have Chris Greer, the GM, and you can put together a long-term plan, which is working. Sashi Brown in Cleveland. So maybe it's there's no rule in the NFL against tanking, so go for it.
So here we go. They're going to tank, but as you said, they're going to give Flores the patience required, and that means moving on from Tannehill, looking really ugly this year, but building for more in the future. By the way, I'm reading Steve Belichick's book right now, The Methods of Scouting. It's actually not that hard to find. It used to be like an urban legend, right?
Yeah.
Oh, if you could get your hands on it. I got it on Amazon for like $10, paperback. So everyone ordered it. It's fascinating. But the thing that comes to mind, and things comes to mind with Flores, is the discipline and the integrity. Those are two of the key points. I'm like 20 pages into the book, and it's all discipline. Talk about watching movies because this was written in the 60s, so watching film. But discipline and integrity. It sounds like Flores is cut from that cloth.
Yeah, you saw Stephon Gilmore, should have been the MVP, say it's hard sometimes. Even when we win, it feels like we lose because of how hard it is. That's the heart of a champion. When we were watching the game, my love Kate just said this is one of those moments where the way the coach rides you back in August is like you have the this is why you ride us. This is why you demand this from us. We get it now. Like Gilmore says, it's all worth it. But you have to get all the way to the end to see the why. And it sucks sometimes, but you have to stay committed. This Malcolm Butler stuff that they said, well, Pepper Johnson said, well, the team would be upset with Belichick if he didn't do what he needed to do to keep the integrity of the way. So I think that Flores is fully schooled, and hopefully the owner takes a step back and they give it a chance to work.
It's tough love. I mean, that's what it is. And it's, you can get that from your father or your mother, basically. But I remember for me personally, my dad being hard on me growing up. And then when you grow up and you're like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for being that way with me, because now I understand the thought process. And that seems to be what the Patriots have really gravitated towards. It's the championships are fun. They had fun on their parade, but actually going through, who was it? It was Kelsey, right? It was Jason Kelsey.
Oh yeah.
That was like, I'd rather win one ring and have fun than win. So, okay, that's your choice.
Yeah.
I'm not against people having choices, Bloom, but the Dolphins are choosing to tank here, basically.
Yeah, well, and hey, if you've been watching the AFC East lately, don't punch. Everyone's tanking.
Right, everyone's tanking.
The Bills were supposed to be tanking whenever they made the playoffs. So
right. McDermott messed that a year too soon. First year. So with Flores, don't worry about the records. Just worry about the long-term results. So you feel much better as we wrap up the Flores conversation. You feel much better about this hire because of that plan. It doesn't seem like the Bengals really have a plan other than not Marvin Lewis and not Hugh Jackson. It seems like the Dolphins do have.
Well, at least it wasn't Hugh Jackson, because there was a lot of that in the air leading up to the end of the season. Otherwise, I mean, at least Cincinnati's trying something different, like you said. But with Miami, and look, this needs to be said too. You have the only minority head coach hire. You have the minority GM. So, it's just something. At least there's that opportunity, and this is there were things said. The coaches can't come out and say what they really want to say because they have to work in the NFL. But there's at least some indication that maybe things are getting a little bit rougher out there in those terms. So that absolutely stands for an outpost. I know that people took note of how many of the minority head coaches that were fired this off season, leading up to this end of the season, and so that's something to watch with Miami as the sort of point of the spear there.
Yeah, point of the spear there. And by the way, this is part 2 of our Coaching Carousel show. Part 1 is on YouTube as well. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Click like and subscribe and hit the bell and all that kind of stuff. Nobody knows how YouTube works anymore, Bloom, but hit everything you can. Thumbs up, please, all that kind of good stuff. And we thank you for watching. And thanks for listening to the Audible on iTunes. Again, we'll give you about 240 to 50 episodes a year. So thank you very much, as always, there. Now, the last time we did this, I think we closed out the show. It was like, it's going to be Gary Kubiak in Denver. And then it wasn't, like later that day, because everyone was kind of blindsided by this. Knowing the behind the scenes stuff is a little bit disappointing, honestly, because you have a relationship with John Elway and Gary Kubiak that seems to be damaged now, because you have Gary Kubiak wanting. I went from, when the news came out about Kubiak not being the OC, I went from like, what the hell are the Broncos thinking? And then I heard about Gary Kubiak wanting Rick Dennison back in, and Brian Periani. And then I went, well, what the hell is Kubiak thinking? Like, read the room. You should have known they didn't want those guys back in the building. And, that was the final straw, if you will. And so I hope that everything's okay with Elway and Kubiak's relationship because of that lifelong friendship that they've had basically since the early 80s until now. But it definitely kind of threw everything into a loop here in Denver. And now Rich Scangarello comes in as the offensive coordinator working under Kyle Shanahan. They give the blessing for Scangarello to get that interview. The Broncos, they were initially going to deny it. The Broncos get him anyway. So Scangarello's in, Shanahan system's back. I think that's, if Philip Lindsay can work on anything, I think that's potentially good for Royce Freeman, like really good. They need it to be really good for Royce Freeman because he didn't understand the fullback concepts that they were using last year, and didn't really understand the footwork, the timing necessary. Maybe that's better this year, and they need that supplement. They need, Philip Lindsay's a 1,000-yard rusher. They need Royce Freeman to be a 700-yard rusher or a 900-yard rusher. They've done it before. Tatum Bell and Mike Anderson did it, 2005 or whatever it was. So your thoughts on the Scangarello hire and kind of the curveball we were thrown last time we did the show?
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things. We'll just touch on them. Offensive coordinators, but this one, of course, is was that curveball. And it's Cecil mentioned, we're still open for the off season. Look for the off season menu to get up later this week or next week, and all kinds of content, DFS content, best ball, draft content, all kinds of stuff, all free in the off season at footballguys.com. So we're still there for you. I think Jason Wood's going to do some stuff on coaching changes. There's a lot of offensive coordinator coaching changes. And Cecil, I think we've talked a lot more about play callers and scheme designers on our show than we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So this is important. Yes. I mean, this is important intel. And then we start filling in more and more as we learn more and more. So the Kubiak thing, of course, Kubiak ends up in Minnesota as a consultant, really to get his son on the staff, basically. Right. NFL still a nepotism stronghold. And then you have Scangarello, who truly is a Kyle Shanahan disciple, right? I think he was an offensive coordinator in college. And he said, I went to the Shanahan offense as the blueprint for my offense. And it's kind of like Zach Taylor in so much as Mike LaFleur and McDaniel, the run game, pass game coordinators. I believe the 49ers blocked interviews with them. But sure, you can interview our quarterback coach. And hey, what Scangarello did with Nick Mullins was terrific. And yes, it sounds obvious, but yes, Denver should throw a late round pick at San Francisco for Mullins, just to continue that relationship and that development. As you mentioned, the effect on the you have the running game, hopefully continuing to get going. We also have to mention Mike Munchak, who strangely, you won't give me the head coach job? Well, how about I just have my same job in Steelers?
His daughter lives here and his grandkids are here, so he wanted to be here. But I think that's great for Vic Fangio because now the Broncos have two head coaches basically, and Munchak should get that offensive line going like he did for our Steelers, remarkably, because for years and years we talk about their garbage offensive line, and the Broncos should be better there, and that'll help what Scangarello wants to do.
Yeah, so it should be better. It should be better. I mean, the quarterback position is obviously a big question mark.
By the way, on the Nick Mullins thing, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I will say this. Scangarello gave Mullins Case Keenum film to watch and say, watch this guy can do this with you. Oh. So he's,
it's two Case Keenums. That's great.
It's more than just
maybe one day you all can also be Case Keenum. Well,
yes, now including more Case Keenum. So yes, Scangarello is seriously interested in working with Case Keenum, but he's a stopgap. Elway already said that. Whether they get you Locke or whether they won't get Foles, by the way, a little tidbit.
While we're on the subject,
by the way, it's been emphasized to me because I've talked about Foles on the air, and I've gotten phone calls from people saying Denver will not get him. Denver will not get Foles. So I'm just passing on what I've heard.
Okay, so pass on this on, or maybe pass something on by not saying anything. But I see some folks out there writing with a note of certainty about the aptly named Drew Lock and always interest. And of course, then the next question is, well, if it's true, if it's authentic, why would it ever be out here this early? But
it's a ruse. That's why. I'll be honest. I've asked the question. I knew it at the Shrine game. As soon as I get to the Shrine game, everybody, media, scouts, were like, oh, Elway loves Drew Lock, huh? Like, it was the worst kept secret in the league. And this isn't a James Laurinaitis thing. Remember when Laurinaitis came out and was like, oh, everybody knows Green Bay's going to. Like, this is just okay. Yeah, I guess everybody knows that. But what's Elway 101? Elway 101 is talk a lot about the quarterbacks, right? And take a defensive player. At 10, they'll go Greedy Williams. They'll go Devin White. They're not going to go with a quarterback at 10, at least from what I
Sure, that caveat. So, but see, I'll take the ball and run with it from like the NFL 100. That was a great commercial, by the way. Usually, I wouldn't say something was a great commercial. It included the Immaculate Reception. I mean, the Immaculate Reception was in there. So you're gonna win me over. So I'm just gonna go real fast through a ton of other offensive coordinator news and just a few defensive coordinator items before we sign off. Cleveland got Todd Monken. That's awesome. I mean, that sounds great to me. Green Bay got Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah. Oh, you see the stuff about everyone talking on Aaron Rodgers now, Greg Jennings, and who else? Bajik, Akbar. My brain is there were 2 or 3 players, Jeff Janis, all saying, yeah, Rodgers' ego can get in the way. He's not always the most coachable player.
It's not just former coaches that are saying that now.
No, it's his former teammate. Jermichael Finley, another one. All saying, yeah, Rodgers and a young coach, like he thinks a lot of himself, Rodgers. He's getting paid more. He's older or as old, roughly this is, we'll see. You have John DeFilippo in Jacksonville, hence Fultz Jacksonville. I don't know. Darrell Bevel in Detroit, Joel Gaines and the Joel No Gaines. When you hear that name, Cease, you think great, better times are coming for that offense,
right?
With the Jets, Kevin O'Connell, from that Patriots tree, kind of in Washington. Arthur Smith trying to have some continuity for Tennessee. The tight end coach gets promoted. He says a lot of Derrick Henry. We'll see. Kellen Moore, wasn't he a player like a year or two ago or something?
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's now going to be the play caller.
And John Kitna, speaking of players.
Yeah, John Kitna saying,
watch
take
those
that
Kitna
shot.
videos. You tweeted that out, I think, Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those Kitna
great.
videos. Watch them. They're very worthwhile.
And Jason Garrett is just a figurehead at this point. And also a weird one, Tim Kelly is now the offensive coordinator. So there is offensive coordinator in Houston again, but Bill O'Brien won't say who's calling plays. So it sounds like more whatever. Lots of changes, though. A lot of stuff that we're going to track, a lot of stuff that we're going to watch to see what the downstream effect. And of course, Greg Schiano, he's a made man. He's in the Belichick family. He's back. And Steve Spagnuolo is back as a defensive coordinator with Kansas City. So, all kinds of stuff. And that doesn't even get to like some of the interesting position coach stuff, like Indianapolis letting go their offensive line coach. Well, I don't know if we mentioned it last time that Chuck Pagano is back. And Joe Woods is back, in San Francisco, and so
maybe
on.
He'll be less distracted there.
Yeah, I think that he may find that he can just like stare out at the ocean or the Golden Gate Bridge.
Slide into those DMs. I've said too much.
Zip, 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 zip. Where's the 5-second delay like the old Saturday Night Live?
Where's the dump button? We're going to press the dump button. Yeah, I think that's is that a wrap for what we got?
Well, I mean, there's a lot, and any number of these things could go off into discussions, which could branch off into more discussions. But it all is just that off-season wheel turning, and that's what we love. You said non-playing season. We love. Oh, well, I guess the other thing is the record of the week. And see, this one I thought about you when I picked this one out. I found this at Euclid Records, of course, 99 cents. It's Focus, Moving Waves. Focus is Dutch, like early prog, like with the edge, like arena, like really indulgent guitar arena rock. You probably have heard the song before, even though you don't recognize it. It actually got to number 9 on the U.S. charts, and includes yodeling and whistling and scatting. And
wow.
I know. And Eefing. Have you ever heard of Eefing?
Effin?
Eefing. Eefing. So
No.
Eefing. This is all record of the week, folks. I'm going to try to make this a really fruitful segment. And see, so I think you'd find this interesting too. Eefing is actually like 100 years old, from Tennessee, like some Appalachian thing that's kind of like beatboxing. It's kind of like bluegrass beatboxing, but it's old. There's a really good video out there, a YouTube video. I almost want to tell you to like pick this up and make it like an outro, because it's pretty hilarious. Of Eefing, a country music star, Jimmy Riddle. He was on Hee Haw. And he explained Eefing, and he puts it together. I'm going to embarrass myself, because it's like, I can't even do it. Like, you put together, it's like inhaling and making and making an kind of all at the same time. And it's just the things you learn, Eefing. And there was a hit, Little Eefing Annie, in the 60s. Alvin the Chipmunks tried Eefing on a Alvin the Chipmunks episode in the 60s. So for a little bit there, it was kind of like a cultural phenomenon, Eefing. Wow. And it made this great album, 99 cents. Euclid Records. Being a record collector in New Orleans is fantastic. And Hocus Pocus is the song. Hocus Pocus by Focus. If you listen to classic rock stations as a kid growing up, like in the 70s, 80s, you've heard the song.
I think I tried Eefing in college, but that was in my more suggestible days. Anyway, that's a wrap for today's program. And many thanks you guys for listening. Bloom, I just want to show you the weather here, because the snow is coming down like crazy.
About 75 here.
Yeah, thanks for that. You probably won't be able to see it. It'll be a whiteout behind me, but
there it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Watch out for the mountain lions.
Yeah, we do have mountain lions. We have bears. in our backyard as well. So
can you suffocate a mountain lion, Cecil? Was that one of the things you had to do out, on
out
the
in the
ranch?
country?
Yeah.
No, just bulldogging. No mountain lions. But we'll be tuned in with the snorkel scuba submarine. Damn it.
Yeah.
Almost had it. We'll get that in maybe the end of this week and maybe early next week. And of course, more news and notes shows. We'll be checking in with you guys on YouTube. So chat room, what's up? And yeah, we got some Todd Gurley things to talk about. That'll be for later. But thank you guys for watching. Thanks for listening to the Audible. Stay tuned and stay frosty.